The lamp. This is a very personal piece, an invitation to a very deep kind of leadership that we encounter on mystical journeys and searches for meaning and connection, and not connection with people or even ourself, which is such an abstract idea sometimes to us, but it's a connection for a longing for connection for perhaps our higher self or our higher calling, or some hand reaching back in the dark that we're searching for, that lets us know that we are not fools in our spiritual and mystical pursuit, that there is a something there, obviously not Christian God or fairies or angels, but because those can be so distorted and diminished in a certain way, and they can be such a small paradigm in which to hold a very, very deep and profound conversation. But for anybody who's wrestled with this deeply, really deeply, who has spent anguish in their lives, not chiefly in amongst the wars and troubles, money troubles and emotions and those kind of human brambles, but more in the desert and up the mountain, wanting to touch and be touched, wanting to witness and be witnessed, wanting to know and be known. And it's from my first book of poetry, which is always going to be a somewhat unrelatable piece of work, because it's the expression of a mystical journey, which is not an easy journey, and it can be quite obscure sometimes for someone who's not deeply involved in the same path or exercise. And this piece is called The Lamp. I climbed up and reached for you. I climbed up and reached for you. To reach, poetically, to reach is a very powerful concept and idea. It means to both aim for something beyond ourselves, but it's the same word that we use to describe our arrival there. I reached for the higher branch and I reached my destination. I climbed up and reached for you. I wandered long and alone through the dark. I called you by your many names, but your house lay empty. The weathered door hanging loose upon its hinges. The weathered door hanging loose upon its hinges. And a note beside the Unkept Way read, "Let mine be the hand that reaches down. Let mine be the lamp that lights the way." It's such a difficult reality to face, which is this deep invitation to spiritual leadership that we encounter when we become deep seekers. When we robbed of meaning in our lives, we think originally it's a punishment initially, especially because of the Judeo-Christian framing which so many of us have scrubbed into our heads, and we don't have the wit or the sense of love and self-permission to remove those. And the removal of some of those ideas are not like removing raisins from a bowl of cereal. It's more like removing sugar from tea. It's like Velcro, and the pulling apart of which is like a dehusking or a threshing, and it's not like the husk that comes loose is costless to us. It's no dearer to us than, or no less dear than, limbs or like children or our flesh. And we have to first remove these ideas, and such a vacuum of context and meaning is left. And then we try, as I did, if you have the same experience, we try and go, fuck all that noise, I'm not going to be hurt by this anymore, I'm not going to be made a fool of twice. And we look for a sense of meaning and safety or certainty, maybe, in a clinical understanding, a reductionist understanding, a scientific understanding of the world. And I'm really glad that I did that. I'm glad that I put down the whole project of spirituality and religion and mysticism completely, and I immersed myself authentically and wholeheartedly in the world of science and physics and reductionism and psychology and understanding, because I wanted to understand the nuts and bolts. But it's only much later much later that I came to the realization that the unwellness that I was suffering inside of myself was not a mental illness. It was a spiritual unwellness, a spiritual depletion. And I realized that it's very, very rare kind of human being, a very rare kind of human being that can live without that sacred warmth or that sacred fire in the heart, that thing that warms us, that touches us, that is maybe best described by words like soul or sacred. And remembering sacred doesn't have to have anything to do with shared ideas of God or religion or whimsy. It's just this answered wish, really, an answered wish to find something deep and meaningful and profound about the world, and a private, very private sense of meaning and belonging and gratitude that we feel from that encounter or that discovery. And soul is not something ethereal. It's as tangible as any of our feelings and emotions. It's our hunger and our thirst for meaning, for connection, for purpose, for belonging. And underneath all of our dramas, underneath all of our status games, this is actually what is at play. And a life that causes you a lot of suffering, it seems like a punishment, but it's actually an invitation. It's an invitation to understand perspective, and the perspective is the keeper of meaning, and the meaning is that you are being dehusked, you are being threshed, and all of the stuff that is not you is coming loose painfully. And we make investments in our identities, we make investments in our beliefs, and for them to break, it's painful, but the truth does set us free. But at first it breaks our hearts and takes our promises from us along the way. And we realize that if we'd been given our dreams and our wishes, our small wishes, we would have remained small. It's precisely those things that get taken from us that eventually lead us into a kind of grace and greatness and equanimity and a sense of power. But as we learn more about the world, and learn more and admit our own truth, admit it, we realize that we want something greater or higher than us, because we feel so inadequate in this world. We feel so uncertain as to which path to follow. And especially if you've been made a fool of by your spiritual beliefs or by religion before, you're very reluctant to go there again. And it's another heartbreaking moment where you realize that you have to put your whole belief or self in this little altar of hope that you had as a child, which was the very reason your heart was broken in the first place. But if you're lucky, you arrive, like I do, at a reasoned faith, where you realize that either, if there is such a thing as a God, it definitely cannot be so small as the definition we get explained to us in Christianity. It just cannot. That cannot be a being with jealousy and capriciousness who kills the firstborn sons. There has to be a higher magnitude or a higher cosm of meaning or of purpose or of reason behind all of this. And mysticism very much is a search for that kind of connection and that kind of knowing that doesn't violate our reason, especially in ways that makes us have to accept things like suffering. I want to understand why. I wanted to understand why. Why is me and other people suffering? And I also had an intuition that my answer was not at the feet of a teacher or at the hem of a sage. I wanted to have a personal relationship with this level of understanding, and not just a clinical understanding either. I wanted to know that I was on my way home. What is the prayer that we all carry in our hearts? It's stop for a minute and sit with me and close your eyes and just think. The prayer is, I want to be whole and I want to be home. To be whole is to be individual inside yourself, is to not be at war inside yourself. It's to have mastery and peace throughout your whole existence, in the place that you are and in how you are in that place. And to be home is where you feel like you belong, where you know that when you are not there, people miss you when you're not there, and they care about you coming home. and they see the value in you, not for what you do or what you bring, just for the steadiness of what you are in yourself. And we all secretly want to be whole, and we want to be home. And this was a reflection on that. And it says, I climbed up. Our spiritual pursuits are about climbing the tree of life, climbing the vine, climbing the stairwell to heaven, climbing the mountain, climbing Jacob's ladder. I climbed up and reached for you. I wandered long and alone through the dark. I wandered long and alone through the dark. No map, no compass, no guiding hand, no encouragement. I wandered long and alone through the dark. I climbed up and reached for you. I wandered long and alone through the dark. I called you by your many names, but your house lay empty. Your house lay empty. The weathered door hanging loose upon its hinges, and a note beside the unkept way read, let mine be the hand that reaches down. Let mine be the hand that reaches down. Let mine be the lamp that lights the way. So many times in my desperate's not the right word, but my very earnest searching, I encountered this sense of a note again and again and again. It meant that as much as I was longing to touch and be touched, to witness and be witnessed, to know and be known, to see and be seen, it meant that I knew that longing deep in my heart. I knew it. I knew the pain of it. I knew the suffering of it. I knew the reality of it. And I knew I couldn't turn away either. It wasn't a crack at it for which, if I didn't get it right in the first few minutes, I would, call it quits and walk away. There was no stopping for me. I had to find it or die trying. And if I feel that, other people feel that. And the invitation in that loneliness, in the unrequitedness, is actually an invitation to great souls to create that which they cannot find in the world, to be that which they cannot belong to in the world, so that they can become that which other people can belong to. How beautiful is that? And when I realized that, it took me a long time actually to own that without resentment or without frustration, because I knew the truth of it. And this is the beautiful thing. We can be willing and we can be ready. And we've learnt in our Western modern thinking that willingness is some kind of virtue. We're all willing. I'm willing to run a marathon, but I'm not ready to run a marathon. I'm willing to jump on the jiu-jitsu mat with a black belt, but I'm not ready to do that. I'm willing to become a father again to a toddler at age 47, but I wasn't ready. And I'm willing to be the kind of person that can have that equanimity, to be the guiding light for other people, even though I can't find one myself. To be the hand that reaches down, even though I'm missing a hand reaching down for me. But I wasn't ready yet. And some part of our souls is greater than we can understand at the time of our struggle. And the reason we keep struggling is not because life is punishing us. It's actually because a greater version of ourselves we've yet to embody is holding the line, saying, I know what's best for you, and I know what you're going to be satisfied with in the long run, and anything that doesn't come to you is too small for you. So the real question becomes, how soon can you embrace your own greatness? And how soon can you live with the weight of that question, of the implications of what it means to be great and not yet feel great, or to have a great destiny and not know how to embody that? And this is really at the heart of the golden question, which the golden rule. We're all trying to codify philosophy and morality, and there was a beautiful thing that was said. I forget the rabbi's name, but he was making a commentary on the Torah, the Jewish holy works. And Torah is misunderstood because Torah actually means law, and especially with the Hebrew literal interpretation of Leviticus and the Ten Commandments and all the rest. We all think laws are imperatives, moral imperatives or legal imperatives. What it actually is, it's a codified way of explaining laws, more like the laws of gravity or the laws of thermodynamics, more facts about the way the world is, and how much easier life becomes when we amend ourselves to the truth of those facts. I hope that lawnmower doesn't bother us, otherwise I might just walk inside and finish this video. But it's the law of cause and effect, the law of cycles and rhythms, the law of polarity, the law of correspondence, and as above, so below. And these are not laws as in moral imperatives. They're laws as in you do yourself an enormous service by paying attention to how the world works and living accordingly, because that's harmony. And in that same tradition, there's no word for curse. The word is correction. And so the idea of sin is that we are flawed somehow and we're doing something bad, where the actual invitation is to realize that we're simply standing with our back to the light, seeing the world distorted and covered with looming shadows of our own projection and our own imagination, and the distortion that we inherited from our families and our societies, our schools, our upbringings, our troubled relationships. And this discombobulated world that we've organized for ourselves here, it's not a healthy place at the moment. And correction is nothing more than the simple understanding that you've been going the wrong way, heading the wrong direction, asking the wrong questions, holding the conversation in the wrong stance, maybe a critic stance or a negligent stance or a victim stance, and that all it takes is for us to step into our own sense of self-love, self-curatorship, self-mastery, self-leadership, and turn back. In doing that is how we turn back towards the light. There's no holy shaft of light hanging down that we have to turn towards and supplicate ourselves in front of. We just have to put the hubris of thinking we know better down and amend ourselves to the wisdom of the way the world works and the way we are and the way the soft animal in us and the inner child in us wants to also belong in that world. And we suffer anxieties and we suffer depression and we suffer this languishing of meaninglessness. We are overwhelmed in everything that we're doing. The world is overwhelming. And there's no way to follow that we can write down in a book. The way to follow is to simply start paying attention, real attention to the truth of ourselves, what we really want, how we want to belong, and how fundamentally everybody wants to belong that way. But a lot of people are broken and confused. And the harder you are as a seeker, not everyone is a seeker. Some of us are fairly comfortable with this mess. I don't know how, but we have varying degrees of comfort. But if you are a true seeker, this poem will relate to you. I climbed up and reached for you. I climbed up and reached for you. I wandered long and alone through the dark. I called you by your many names. But your house lay empty, the weathered door hanging loose upon its hinges, and a note beside the unkept way. Why was the way unkept? Because the way that I'm following, there are no keepers of that way. There are keepers of lots of small distorted ways or old ways which have kind of not become redundant, but just harder to follow in our modern madness. And the technologies in those ways, like Buddhism and Kabbalah and yoga and breath work, and there's some beautiful ways, but they can't get 7 billion people across the bridge to tomorrow because they narrow in some way culturally or in terms of their speed and efficacy. And so we need a new way now. But we need a new way that can start right at the ground beneath our feet. Right at the ground beneath our feet. Not in some book, not tugging at the hem of a sage, not leaning into a book or gathering in rooms and listening to one person pretending to know everything. It's not possible anymore. It's not possible anymore. Now we need to look for the ignored voice that is speaking out from deep inside of us. And we need to become a window through which we can express generosity to ourselves again. And if you are like me and you are troubled, deeply troubled, or were deeply troubled, I was, in finding something reaching back and guiding me, your first step is the invitation to become and embody the exact thing that you were seeking in the world and be that for other people. And then you will find the more you do that, the more the thing that you were looking for to see and be seen by, to touch and be touched by, manifests in your life. It is the way. I climbed up and reached for you. I wandered long and alone through the dark. I called you by your many names, but your house lay empty. I was the house that lay empty. And a note, and but your house lay empty, the weathered door hanging loose upon its hinges, and a note beside the unkept way. The way I was facing my life, the way I was conducting myself was the unkept way. And the note read, let mine be the hand that reaches down, let mine be the lamp that lights the way. I'm talking about many subjects at the moment. I'm talking about self-leadership, actualization, how we balance our troubled work lives, home lives, relationships, how we deal with ancestral healing, generational trauma, inner child healing, shadow work. And when I was doing all of this, I thought that I came across this idea of soul retrieval. And to me, I just thought, yeah, that's something I need to include in the quiver. And the more I explored it and practiced it and sat with what the implications of it were, the more I realized it's not one of the things. It is the thing. It is the whole medicine. It is the whole way. Everything we're doing should be about soul retrieval. And what is soul but our sense of meaning, belonging, connection, and purpose? And if you are not sitting with those things all the way, seeking to be the one that lights the lamp, to shine light on all of those things and how to let them live in the world through you and through your struggles, give your struggles meaning. Find your purpose. It doesn't have to be glamorous. Just do your part. If it's a great part, do it with grace. And if it's a small part, do it with greatness. Do it with greatness. And be the thing, be the person that other people can belong to. Value meaningful connection. Stop having shallow interactions with people at dinner time, with your children, with each other, online. If you've got nothing deep and meaningful to say, it's okay to be quiet. It's okay to be quiet. Take every conversation you can deeper. Be the genius, be the soul of the place that you stand in all the time. Connect things to meaning, connect symbols to meaning, memories to meaning, pieces of music to meaning. Play those pieces of music. Think back to your ancestors, to the people that allowed you to be here, even though you've got no concept of their struggles and their efforts and their trials and their sacrifices. It's not like they did it all for you, but you wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them. And to simply connect with their wish to prosper and to flourish and for their lives to have meaning, to connect with how they have enabled you to be here today, is to give their lives meaning, is to inherit that vitality and that goodwill. We are who our ancestors sang about in their prayers and in their sacred ceremonies. We are their sacred gift to the world. And to just make connection with that, meaningful connection with that, is to inherit meaning and purpose and belonging and connection again. And then to think about the lives we're going to touch every day around us. How we can show up for our families and our loved ones and our friends, and how we can challenge things that are broken and ugly and distorted and unwell with love and with conviction. Means we are aiming to change the world in positive ways around us. And creation, small acts of creation, especially when times are dark like they are now, have an amplified effect. If you are struggling with overwhelm, you ask yourself, and if you're struggling with meaninglessness, if you're struggling with isolation and with depletion, you ask yourself, which doors can I open in my own understanding, in my own acceptance, doors through which I can be more generous and more loving and more accepting of myself? And how can I embody that for other people so that mine is the hand that reaches down in the dark and mine is the lamp that lights the way? It's brought me great peace, and I know it can bring you great peace too. We are who we repeatedly choose to be.